interested now. Got it. Oh, please tell me it's still on there. All right, everybody, so welcome back to another episode of Colton Posey Fishing. Today we're going to be going over swim jigs, one of my favorite ways to catch fish that's up in deep vegetation. Number one, because I get to run braided line. Number two, because I get to horse the fish around, and typically they're super aggressive when it comes to this bite. And it's a great technique to practice and keep in your back pocket in midsummer while everybody's offshore and stuff. A lot of times these fish that stay up shallow aren't getting as much pressure as the fish that's out there deep. So, you know, either way, if that interests you, stay tuned because it's something you don't want to miss. As always, if the video helps you at all, make sure to hit that thumbs up button. It helps me out a ton. Subscribe down below. I got you covered when it comes to anything bass fishing, and comment if you ever have any questions. Anything you want to add, or you just want to talk fishing. I love hearing from you guys. All right, since we're on the subject of swim jigs and stuff, guys, this is a perfect time to talk about this video's sponsor, Vantage Tackle. If you haven't checked those guys out, make sure to go to the website. Everything will be linked down in the description. You can use my code Colton25 and you'll get 10% off your entire purchase from here on out. So stick that code in your back pocket. It helps you out a ton, helps me out a ton. And they've got everything, you know, custom made baits. I mean, it's custom hand built baits, wire tied jigs and chatter baits and spinner baits, all this stuff that we really like to run at a very affordable price. Most of the time cheaper than what you can get your big name brands for. So make sure to check those guys out. All right, so talking about swim jigs. So this is one of my favorite times to run a swim jig, you know, and this is when we're really dealing with a lot of grass. Okay, we've got grass coming pretty far off the bank or right up against the bank, either case. But you know, typically that grass that's closer to the bank, I'm gonna go with like a bluegill color type swim jig. Okay, and when I say closer to the bank, I'm talking like, you know, 5 foot off of the bank, within that area, that 5 to, I'd say probably 8 foot range at the most. Typically those bluegill are really going to be hanging around those areas because the bluegill's not going to get out on these points most of the time. You will have some areas and some fisheries where bluegill do get out there and kind of swim around with the bass, but they'll get eat up, you know, pretty quick. But a lot of these bluegills like to move up in these real deep cover areas. They just feel more protected. But a lot of times these bass will sit further out from where the bluegill are sitting, facing the bank. That's the reason if you ever went fishing and you're throwing your bait right up against the bank and you're getting bit every time, but if you throw it a little bit closer towards, you know, your boat, you're not really getting bit. You're like, what in the world's going on? Typically that's why you're around some fish who are eating bluegill or eating shad that's blew up on the bank from like wind or current or something like that. But one of the most important things is your rod, right? So this is a 6'9" heavy extra fast action rod. Okay, this is a Daiwa Fugo, I think that's how you say it. And then I've also got it teamed up with the Daiwa Reel. It's 7:1 gear ratio. I do like a higher gear ratio. Typically, I'm going to be throwing this in that sparse pad, sparse grass. So it's nothing real thick. So I want to run typically 30-pound braid, okay, because it just kind of slices through that stuff a lot easier when you go to set the hook and stuff. You know, if I'm throwing, you know, maybe a heavier swim jig or something like that up in some deeper cover or heavier cover, you know, you may want to go to like a 50 or a 60 or something like that. But, you know, 30 pounds typically where I stay at. And the swim jigs that I really like to use, one of them is made by Dirty Jigs. I know y'all have heard Dirty Jigs 100 times, but there's two things that I like to run on the back. Number one is going to be like a paddle tail style swim bait. Okay, I typically like to go with like a 3.5 inch. I like running the Zoom one this time of year, the Zoom swim bait, just because the ribs aren't pointed forward, so it actually creates less resistance. You still get some resistance, but not as much as the Rage Swimmer, and it still displaces a lot of water, and I can speed this bait up a little quicker. I'm keeping my rod tip up high. As you'll see in the video, I'm keeping my rod tip up high, and I'm running that bait right across the top of the pads and the grass and stuff. Most of the time when they commit to it, they absolutely slay it. The other style trailer that I really like, which this one's done been bit off and stuff, but it's actually a Rage chunk. There's actually supposed to be another crawl right here, but either way, you know, a Rage chunk, I will typically team that up on it. And you know, that's typically if I really need that speed behind that bait with that, Swimmer on the back, I'm typically gonna, I can still speed that bait up, but it's gonna create some resistance to where I can't speed it up super fast. So the crawl style bait kind of mitigates that to where I actually can get more speed, and I can get in a little bit sleeker areas without stuff getting caught up or banging off of stuff like that. So, you just kind of play around with your trailers. One day they could be hitting the swim bait on the back, the next day the crawl, and then some days like today they'll hit either one. It doesn't really matter. Now the other way that I really like to run a swim jig is if I've got areas where this grass or these pads are coming out and these fish are staying off of that grass, maybe on the flat area of a point or something like that. I really like running a swim jig that way, but now that's when I swap over to fluorocarbon. Okay, so I'll typically go with like a 15-pound fluorocarbon, same trailers. I'm just swimming that bait. Every now and again I may include a pop, just a little light pop or something like that, but nothing too crazy. Like when I'm throwing up in this stuff, I'm actually shaking my rod tip as I'm reeling that bait, and what it's doing is keeping that bait nose up where it'll come through that cover and stuff. But that's just a quick 101 swim jig fishing. From the setup to the baits that I use. Like I said, I use the dirty jigs a lot. I also like using the Strike King Hack Attack heavy cover swim jig. It comes through stuff a little better than the dirty jigs, but either one's great. Use whatever you feel comfortable using. Guys, I really appreciate you stopping by, and if the video helps you at all, make sure to hit that thumbs up button. It helps me out a ton. Also subscribe down below. I got you covered every week when it comes to bass fishing. We're on our way to 20,000 followers here on YouTube. And then also comment if you ever have any questions, anything you want to add, or you just want to talk fishing. I love hearing from you guys. I'll see you next time.